So, folks, here we are again. Oh, that was a very fast loading screen, I guess. Looked like it had some interesting comments on it about ghosts and proxy soldiers, but I didn't get to read it. Oh well. Um, at any rate, huh. Okay. I was trying to see some of the other odds and ends in the apartment. Well, that's an interesting old photo. Um, by the way, my understanding is that this apartment is supposed to be somewhat modeled off of Deckard's apartment in Blade Runner. I guess. You know, I don't know that I necessarily would agree that there's a whole lot of similarity, but aside from both of them looking very lived in, maybe. I was going to...
Re-establishing security system. See you soon, Mr. Jensen.
Okay. I was going to offer another little piece of input on nanotechnology and you know, one of the things that we're at with that as far as mass consumer products. Some people might be aware of this, but Samsung is one of the companies that have offered nanotechnology with respect to their nano silver system, which has been used to cover their netbook laptops, as well as there's a that type of system is used in some of their washers and dryers, because they actually got the idea from ancient Greece, because the ancient Greeks used to use silver. They put toss silver at the bottom of water barrels in order to prevent contamination or minimize it anyway, because silver is very good.
Jensen, I'd appreciate it if you instructed your street informants to use more conventional means of contacting you.
What are you talking about, Pritchard?
I mean, I found a message stapled to your door. Colo, alley off Bagley Avenue, Ezekiel. How cryptic.
That's near Seraph HQ. I'll look into it. Oh, and it's Cholo.
Well, we know that's Zeke, so that's nice. We'll see what he has to tell us. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that that's another application of nanotechnology. The idea that Samsung had, again, is from ancient Greece, and they developed some silver iodide nanoparticles. And the advantage to stuff like that is that the silver iodide nanoparticles they developed are smaller than the size of many bacteria. So consequently, the coating that they create on things, since the space between the particles is smaller than the size of the bacteria can't fall through. There's no way for the bacteria to get through it. Well, most bacteria, not all, but, it's a very interesting kind of idea. I guess that's the point. We're going to go ahead and make a new save here. So we're not sure what's going to happen with the Zeke. So I also wanted to offer a comment. When I said that I'm not sure just exactly what'll happen as far as me continuing the playthrough of the game and the analysis, because I really, I'm not liking this game very much. I'm trying, but there's a lot of things in this game that are broken. There just is. And it's like anything else. There's other people who feel kind of similar to me. And then there's other people who think that this game is just great. I would offer the advice or the comment that people who think the game is really great are not comparing it, even on a technical level, fairly with other game products, even just in, say, like the current generation of consoles, or certainly not, the current level of PC hardware. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of bothersome. I'll also point out, I pointed this out in the first mission at the factory, but I'm going to stress it again. You notice how, like, these street gangs out here that we just went through just had to deal with both groups, the ballers and the bangers. Did you see any women in those gangs? You see some women out here on the streets, but I also made the observation that, that they show, like, some prostitutes, which, your former, co-officer, Jenny, you helped her out, and she's posing as a prostitute, but it's like, there are male prostitutes out there too, guys, and, the thing that, well, there's no female gang members that you had to take care of, because, why? Because all guys are prone to violence and being in gangs, and, the fact is, if you do, again, I say this, do a little academic research, okay? Fact is that girl gang violence in America has skyrocketed over the past, say, decade or two. There's been reports of this. It's an area of academic study. It's a serious area of law enforcement and, again, in the social sciences, social workers and stuff, they actually have to deal with this directly. There's, obviously different research done, different theories as to why it's happening. But the point is that, I guess I get into discussions, or not really, I don't know about discussions, but, I participate in the Gamma Sutra columns, gamasutra.com, which is probably the main industry news site, run by the same company that runs the Game Developers Conference. And, one of the hot topics that always gets a lot of feedback from people, lots of different comments and replies, is when somebody posts anything, whether it's a blog post or a news article, about sexism in the game industry, particularly with respect to how women are portrayed, and, there's not very many women working in the industry, and all this other stuff. Well, the problem is it's all anecdotal, and I've worked in the industry in several different capacities over my lifetime. I've been involved with the industry as a consumer since Pong and Space War on teletype machines. And, it's kind of like the popular idea that came about in the 1990s that in education that, oh my gosh, we're shortchanging our girls. The problem is the research that was done, the husband and wife team, who was the big proponents behind that idea, their research was extremely biased and flawed, and most any good researcher has pointed this out. However, policies were made based on that research, and thus we basically are at the current situation where, in actual fact, people who identify as female are graduating from college at higher rates. They're achieving advanced degrees at higher rates than people who identify as male. And if anything, if we want to talk about shortchanging, the actual fact is that it's the boys who are being shortchanged because of the popular but mistaken assumption that they're somehow privileged. And in fact, actually, like in education, they're not. With respect to the gaming industry, well, there's always been women involved in games. There's always been, like for example, Centipede was programmed by Donna Bailey back in the day. There's always been really strong heroines and really good portrayals of young girls or women. And I don't mean, more recent stuff like, say, Lara Croft. I really can't stand Tomb Raider, probably because I don't think that she's a good portrayal of a female character. She's completely unappealing to me. But anyway, if you go back to the 1980s, Phantasy Star, there you go. you know, if you go and look at the movie Tron, and you see the scene near the beginning of the movie, the original Tron, not the new release. But if you go and watch the original movie Tron from 1982, and you see the beginning of the movie, there's a scene in Flynn's arcade. That was an actual arcade that they filmed that scene in. And you'll notice that there are young girls in there playing games, and there are even girls working there as attendants. And yeah, you know, I can tell you, I was, you know, in arcades and hanging out with girls who played games, handheld games, or they played in arcades back then. Now, if you want to argue I should also add in, by the way, I managed amusement centers for 6 years from 1990 to 1996. I sold software in a retail store for a year or so. And I also was part of a, excuse me, a small Japanese startup company for a year and a half in 2001 to 2002. But, you know, the thing is, you know, I followed this a lot, and the industry is global. So what you hear is a lot of times, you know, people who claim, well, you know, men vastly outnumber women. It's, you know, yeah. If you look at certain specific companies, or if you look at certain, like a conference or something, that's might be what you see. Or in certain particular areas, like maybe in programming, for example. But, like, for example, in Japan, most of the illustrators are women. You can see this on the credits if you sit there and look at the games. You know, you have something like in the PC Engine era, the TurboGrafx 16, back in the late 80s, early 90s, that was the 16-bit era. You know, only about 10% of the games made for that system were released to the North American market. The rest of them, the other 90%, were only in Japan. You know, so if you look at games that are only in English, well, you're not going to get a very good depiction or a very good view of the actual industry. And of course, now, over the past roughly 10 years, the other East Asian countries like Korea and China have come on very, very strong. And there's a lot of artists in those countries, a lot of also programmers and people like that. And you even see this in entertainment, you know, fictional entertainment stories, you know, like Japanese anime, for example. Go back to 1992 with Sailor Moon, which was a huge success in Japan and all around the world. Allowed the original creator of the story, Naoko Takeuchi, to retire as a multimillionaire, basically. But the thing is, if you look at the very beginning of that story, you have Usagi-chan, the lead heroine. You see her going to an arcade and playing, you know, Codename Was Sailor V, you know,